Hello and welcome to another Excel tips video. I am Sumit Bansal, and in today's video I am going to show you how to combine multiple rows and get the data in one single column. Now if you're using a newer version of Excel, there is a function to do this which is called TOCOL, and if you are not using the newer version of Excel, then I will show you how to do this using the index function, Power Query or VBA. So let's see how to do this. Here I have this names data set and I want to combine all these names and get the result in one single column. So I want to combine these three names, then these three names and so on. So I'm going to use a new Excel function called TOCOL. And this function is made for this. This function takes this entire range, this entire array, and it is going to give me the result in one single column. See what happens when I select everything and I just hit enter. It combines all these rows and gives me the result here. So it has combined these three names, then these three names and so on. Now, a couple of additional things you can do with this function is in case you have blank cells here, you would notice that as of now, this function gives me 0. So you can adjust the function in such a way that it can ignore blank cells. So in this function, if I go to the second argument, which is optional, by default, it keeps all the values. So it would keep all the values in the selected array, but you can choose to ignore blank cells or errors, or ignore both blanks and errors. So in this case, if I select 3 and hit enter, you would see that it has ignored the blank cells and it has only chosen the cells that has text in it. The other thing that you can do is, so let me press Ctrl Z to get my original data back. The other thing you can do is, in this case, I have combined this data by row. So I've combined these three names, then these three names and so on. But what if you want to combine it by column? So you want to combine these four names, then these four names, and then these four. You can do that as well using the third argument of this function, which is scan by. So you can either scan by row, which is the default thing, and you can also scan by column. So in this case, if I select true here and hit enter, it's done. It has combined these four names, then these four names, and then these four names here. So this is a very, very simple function and it instantly does the job. Now, if you're using an Excel version that does not have TOCOL function, then there are other methods that I'm going to show you. You can use a formula, but the formula becomes a little complicated, and you can also use Power Query and VBA. So let me show you those methods. Here again, I have the same data and I want to use a function to get all these names in one single column. So I'm going to use the index function, which is available in all versions of Excel. So the index function that I'm going to use is this array. So it takes three arguments. First, I'm going to give it this array. I've pressed F4 to lock this. And then I need to give a row number and a column number. Now in this case, let's say I give the row number as 1 and column number as 1. It is going to refer to the element in this array, which is at the first row number and column number position. So if I hit enter, it gives me Brad. And I need to now somehow change these positions 1 and 1 and change it accordingly so that it combines all these names and gives me in one single column. So let me create those row number and column numbers for you, show you how it works, and then I'm going to use a formula to create them so that it becomes dynamic. So in this case, my row number is going to be 1, 1, 1 because I first need Brad, then Glenn, and then Emma. All are in row number 1, then 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, and 4, 4, 4. And if I want the column numbers, they're going to be different because Brad is in 1, then Glenn is in 2, and then Emma is in 3. So it would be 1, 2, 3, and this needs to repeat. So these becomes my row number and column number that I want as I'm dragging the formula down. So see what happens when I use the index function and I select this, press F4 to lock it, then choose this as the row number and this as the column number, and hit enter, and I drag this down. You can see that I have got all these names in one single column. But as of now, I have hard coded these values. So what I need to do is create a formula so even these values here become dynamic. So let me delete this and let's create the formula that is going to create these values. So I'm going to first create the row numbers, and to do that, I'm going to use the roundup function. And here my number is going to be row A1, and this is the value that is going to change. It is going to increment when I drag this formula down. So as of now it is 1, but when I drag it down, it would become 2, 3, and 4, and so on. And here I do not want 1, 2, I want 1, 1, 1, then 2, 2, 2, then 3, 3, 3. So I'm going to divide this by the total number of columns from this array, press F4 to lock this, and I'm going to say I want an integer. So I'm going to round it up till an integer. So now when I hit enter, it gives me 1. And now when I drag this down, it gives me this. Now you can also do this using the int function if you want. Anyway, the idea is to just get the same result. Let's do the same thing with the column. So let's delete it. I'm going to use the mod function here. And within the mod function, I have the number and the divisor. So number in this case is going to be row A1. And then I'm going to subtract 1 from it and add the number of columns that are there in this range. Let me press F4 to lock this. And now in the divisor, I can just simply have columns. I would select these again, press F4 to lock this. And in the end, I would just add 1 here. And now when I hit enter, it gives me 1. And now when I drag this down, you can see it gives me 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I have these values now and they are dynamic. Now this is pretty easy to understand. Let me quickly explain what happens here. Here, when I drag this down, this changes to 1, then 2, then 3 and 4 and so on. I subtract 1 from it. So if I take the case of the first position, it is going to be 1 minus 1 and then it adds the number of columns. So it would be 1 minus 1 plus 3. And I'm dividing it by 3. So this is going to, the mod function is going to give me 0, but because I've added 1 here, it gives me 1, which is what I get here. But when I come here, I'm going to use 2 minus 1. So row A2 is going to be 2. So 2 minus 1 plus the number of columns. So this becomes 4. 4 divided by 3 would give me 1. So mod formula gives me 1, and then I add 1 to it, it gives me 2. And similarly, it gives me 3. But when it goes here, it is row A4. So it's going to be 4 minus 1, which is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. And when I divide it by 3, it perfectly divided. So mod function gives me 0 and this gives me 1. So this is how I have replicated this series of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And now I can use this in the index function. So let me copy this part and copy this part. And I'm going to put it in the index function. So this is my array. Let me press F4 to lock this. Then the row number part, which is this here, let me remove the equal to sign, and the column number part, which is here, and let me remove the equal to sign. And now when I hit enter, it gives me this name, and when I drag it down, it gives me all these names that have been combined in one single column. Now, as you can see, if you have the newer version of Excel and you have TOCOL function, it is so easy. But if you do not have it, then the workaround is quite complicated. But again, if you do not have that function, this is a way you can do this. Here again, I have the same data set, and now let me show you how to use Power Queries to combine all these rows and get the data in one single column. So I'm going to select this data set, go to the data tab, and here within get and transform, I'm going to click on this icon, which is from table range. Now, when I click on it, it is going to convert this into an Excel table because Excel tables work really well with Power Query. So when I click on this, see what happens? It shows me this create table dialog box. Now, because my table does not have headers, I'm not going to check this, but if your table does, then you can check this option. And now when I click OK, this is going to get converted into an Excel table, and it is going to then open the data in Power Query. See what happens when I click OK? It opens Power Query, and I have my data in Power Query here. Now with Power Query, this is very simple because this is a classic example of using the Unpivot feature. So what all I need to do is select all these columns, and also remember whatever I'm doing here in Power Query is going to be recorded here in the applied step. So if you want to change anything, then you can do it here later. So I select all these columns, I go to the transform tab here, and then I click on unpivot columns. And as soon as I do this, it converts my 3 column data into these 2 columns where one is attribute, one is value. I can get rid of the attribute here. So I would click on remove, and I can rename this column as names. And that's it, I'm done. I can now go to the home tab, click on close and load, and then click on close and load too. And here I can specify where I want the data. So instead of inserting a new worksheet, I would get the data in the existing worksheet, and I would select this cell here to get the result. And now when I click OK, it is going to load the data here, and you can see all the names have been combined. Now, the good thing about Power Query is that in case your original data set changes, if I change any name here and I refresh the query, it is going to automatically change in my data, in my result of the Power Query. Now, in this case, I have combined this by row, but what if you want to combine it by column? Again, you can easily do this in Power Query. Let me get back into the Power Query editor, and here I started here. So as soon as I opened Power Query, it automatically inserted these 2 steps, source and change type. And then these are the 3 things I did. So before doing any of these 3 things, actually, let me remove these steps just in case so it's easier for you to understand. So when I open my data in Power Query, this is what I get. What I'm going to do is, because I want to combine it by column, I am going to first transpose this data. So I'm going to go to transform, click on transpose. So it transposes the data. And now I'm going to select all these columns and then click on unpivot column. So now I have the same data. I would remove this. I would change this to names. And now when I click on close and load, it already has my data in the sheet and you can see the data has updated. Now it is combined according to the column. So Brad, Chen, Scott, Martha, then Glenn, Harvey, Jenny, Chad, and so on. So you can do either ways with Power Query and you can see this is so easy. It only takes a couple of clicks. And finally, let me show you how to do this using VBA. So here again, I have the same data. I'm going to go to the developer tab and click on the Visual Basic icon. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Alt F11. So hold the Alt key and press the F11 key. This is going to open the VB editor and here click on Insert and then click on Module. This is going to insert a new module and here I'm going to put my VBA code. Now I already have the VBA code here and I can copy it and put it here. And I am going to give you this VBA code in the description so you can copy it and use it from there. And let me paste this code, close the VB editor. And now to use this macro, I'm going to go to the developer tab, click on macros option. And here there is this VBA macro called combine multiple rows to column. And when I run it, it is going to show you this dialog box where it asks you to select the range that has the data, which in my case are these cells. And then when I click OK, it is going to ask you to select the destination cell, which let's say is this cell here. And now as soon as I click OK, it is going to give you the result and show you that message box. So VBA is again very efficient, very fast. If this is something that you need to do quite often, then you can keep this VBA code handy and use it whenever you want. So these are 4 methods you can use. If you're using the new version of Excel, TOCOL function is the easiest way to do this, but you can also easily do this using Power Query or VBA. That's it in this video. I hope you found this useful. Also, if you're liking these videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you never miss out on any new Excel tips video I come up with. Thank you and have a nice day.